This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
Hello, sovereign souls of the Meltiverse. Before we get into it, I just wanted to remind you of a few things that we don't bring up enough. First of all, your support is greatly appreciated. Those of you who subscribe monthly keep this whole thing going, and we are karmically indebted to you. Other ways that you can support us would be to share our podcast or any of our episodes to your friends, family, and cohorts. And this is easier to do than ever right from our completely revamped website, themeltpodcast.net. There you can also leave comments, start discussions, and browse through our new reading list, where you can purchase books written by some of our guests while supporting local bookstores, and we also get a little kickback. If you choose to financially support us, you will get access to our extended episode archives, access to our Melt meetups, and to shows we do with other folks such as Dark Matter, where Emily Moyer, Laura Wilson, Hunter, and I are going methodically through the Twin Peaks canon, rest in peace, David Lynch, and mining the woo. Good stuff through and through. Now on to the business at hand. It's been a while since we've done a show on Sasquatch, and what other way to bring back a subject so near and dear to our hearts than to have Ashlea Stinnett come and recount her ongoing exchanges with this realm of mysterious beings that seem to teeter between solidity and the ether. I first came across her on Emily Moyer's show, Strange Mosaic. Shout out to Emmers for connecting us. And I was impressed not only by Ashlea's knowledge of the subject, but her character and presence. Hunter starts off the conversation by asking Ashlea about her background and where her family falls with all of her experiences.
I also just want to start off our conversation by giving a shout out to Emily Moyer for making this bridge,
Indeed.
and conversation to happen. So thank you to her.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Thank you for checking out the stories and what I've had to share. And yeah. Arizona, right?
Yeah.
I don't think a lot, at least I should say, like there isn't an openness within my family to UFO experiences or paranormal experiences. I do know that my mom had a very particular sighting as a child that she still remembers, and there's fogginess with memory, but this particular one has always stayed with her, and it was a very like physical saucer type ship that actually she lived close to the town square of the small town that I'm from, that she's from, and in the center of the square, there's a courthouse. It's a very old courthouse. And so from her window, she could see the top of that courthouse. And one evening, she saw a very physical flying saucer, typical type of vehicle flying around that. And that stuck with her. When I was in Arizona, and I spent a lot of a lot of time there, like a considerable amount of time of my life was in Arizona at different times,
Hmm.
and then also very much from like 1995 to 2009, 10. So I lived in Tucson. I went to middle school in Tucson. While I was there, so this is like early '90s. I saw Tic Tac type shape UFOs down by the um, Estrella Mountains. Is
Hmm.
that
Yep.
Sabino Canyon area?
Yep.
So, and I was seeing those in the daytime with my friend from school
Mm.
while we laid on, her, um, the bouncy thing. What are those called?
Trampoline.
Trampoline.
Trampoline. Yeah. We lay on our trampoline and look up and see these Tic Tac type, ships. I
Hmm.
had no concept, it's just something that happened. Later on in my teenage years and then later on in my early 20s, there was in I look back at it now, I'm like, that was pretty intense,
Mm.
type of experiences. I at one point I worked 54 miles out in the desert on your way to San Diego, so past the power plant, right?
Hmm.
So I was in law enforcement and I worked in corrections. So I worked at that prison out there and I was on graveyard shift. And so I had a lot of access to looking at the sky.
Right.
And the things that I saw out there, that was like early 2000s. Again, I didn't have a foundation for what I was seeing, but what I was seeing these orange. They were orange in Arizona, which is interesting because they're like orange orbs of light down there. Up
Hmm.
here, I'm seeing more of the white orb of light.
Mm.
That's what I see most often, and what I'm connecting with when I'm having the experiences up here. So interesting, just like it's a noteworthy thing for me to see that I really haven't seen the orange ones up here, but they're down in Arizona.
Right.
you know
Odd. Very odd.
but and just like one night I was working on graveyard and it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And the post that I was working with, I was working in the tower. So like we were up on the top tower
Mm.
staring at the sky. We had binoculars, there's no movement on the yard or anything. So we just had like the access to the sky and we're checking it out. And it was an orange orb situation that looked like there was one that got skipped across the lake, and
Mm.
Mm.
every time it hit the surface, another one would appear. So then there was
Wow.
this whole big long line of orange balls.
Crazy.
We also had mountains out there. And I remember coming in and parking in the parking lot and having other officers and staff like, staring over at this mountain line with lines of UFOs coming in and blinking out and doing all that. And it's like you ask what that is, and nobody knew, or we got told it was military.
Yeah.
And another time I was going to work at this place. It was graveyard shift again. I remember I woke up late, so I was on my way to work late, and it was probably between like 10 and 11 o'clock p.m. that I'm now out on this road, 54 miles in the desert, and all alone. And I had an orb come 50 feet away from me, not far, 50 to 70 feet away from me, up and, right up here, and paralleled me like the entire time that I drove into the desert,
Wow.
for,
Wow.
for quite a few miles.
Mhm.
So again, like I had those experiences throughout the years, but it wasn't it wasn't something that I delved into as a topic of study.
Hmm.
I was wrapped up in my career. I was wrapped up in my friends and the art scene and the music scene and all of the stuff of like the burgeoning Phoenix scene from the early 2000s. Like that was taken up on my time. So yeah, these things were happening, but there wasn't a conscious look back and focus on that. This changes in 2010 when I move up here with my partner to the Pacific Northwest.
Mm.
And she had plenty of paranormal experiences in her time in her life, and I have had all sorts as well. It wasn't just UFOs that I had seen, but I've had ghost activity and
Mhm.
visionary dreams, and I've been open to those things, as well, like learning about that and as the concepts of that.
Mhm.
So, but when we got together and when we moved up here, it became really in our face. And we were having sightings every night, and we were living off of the Columbia River Gorge, up on this hill, like completely away from the city, completely outside of the city, with an expansive view of the northern sky
Mm.
and Washington land on the other side of the river. And then it was just this constant activity. And then we had to ask questions. We had to dive deeper. We started finding out that this was a thing up here. We started learning that sightings are very prominent, and that there's different places that you can go to have experiences and to connect further with the different things happening up here. I had quit. My partner and I had both quit our jobs from Arizona, and when we moved up here, we started a food cart
Cool.
and
Nice.
and a catering business, and we had a line of products that we sold in groceries and such.
Cool.
And we just had a lot of fun with this culinary creation. And then it was like that was happening, and a bunch of UFOs. And we found out about a place that wasn't too far away up in Washington where people would go and have these experiences and these sightings, and it was a known hotspot for paranormal activity, supernatural activity, and lots of UFOs.
Mhm.
So we learned about this place and we went to go visit, and we began a friendship with the caretakers of the land during that time. It's a place that's owned by someone, and there's usually a group of people there who are taking care of all the ins and outs of a working farm and ranch type of place. So we made friends with those caretakers during those beginning times of going up there between 2010 and 2013. And they learned that we had a food cart. And then they learned that we had a food cart, and they let us know that they were looking for new caterers for their conferences
Cool.
and their gatherings. So it was like, that's it's an interesting offer that has now come across our path,
Yeah.
and we're going to take it. And so for 3 seasons, we catered at this place for the events, and that included um, amazing people, speakers who came out there to share their insights and knowledge. It's where I met Neil Kramer and got to cater for some of his events, and who's been just like phenomenally influential in the best ways, ever since.
Mhm.
And I met people there who were coming for the experience as well, and we've kept those friendships. And then also the caretakers of that time, they're no longer there. I no longer go there. I'll never go back over there. There's definitely been a graduation,
Mhm.
but I appreciate what happened and what I experienced and what I was opened up to through those experiences, which included in 2013 my first Sasquatch experience.
Mm.
So 2010, we move up here to 2013. I'm getting downloaded with just like all the bigger truths of reality. I'm having exponential UFO encounters, experiences. I will say a telepathy, but it's a particular type of telepathy. It's not a back and forth conversation, but it is that CE5 type of invocation of asking for connection
Mm-hmm.
and sending out a prayer. I put out prayer, I'll go outside. I'll put my prayer out to God and to all of the higher dimensionals and who are with me on this journey. And I say thank you for all the lessons learned and all the ways in which I'm helped. And that communication will garner a response by them showing up either with flybys or flashes or things of that nature in the sky, and it's mostly up here from these white orbs of light.
Mm-hmm.
And I say white orbs of light, but what I have noticed with the videos that I'm taking of these, and I'll give you a rough number. But when we got up here and we started having all this activity, I started taking a mental tally of all
Right.
the UFOs that I was seeing. And I was just keeping it up here. And so that started around like 2010, 2011. I'm like, okay, I need to actually start keeping account because
Right.
now it's more than I can count on my hands,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So from that time, and I have my whiteboard up here, so it has some fun numbers on it. From that time to July 24th, 2021, I had seen 1,149
Holy shit.
UFOs.
Wow.
Wild.
So it exponentially grows by at least 100 every year. And they're coming in. I do not live out in the country. I'm in the city. There's
Mhm.
plenty of light pollution. I've
Mhm.
got, a small little area of the like southeastern sky.
Mhm.
Um but they come in all the time and they get bright enough and low enough for me to see them with my eyes, and then I ask if I can film them and they'll get brighter. They'll let me know. So there's this back and forth type of communication that
Mhm.
way. I've never had that mind speak that has been had by
Mhm.
others, where there is that communication through language in the mind,
Mhm.
back and forth. Um, and I'm appreciative for that because there's so many other ways of communicating, right? And I feel like at least for me, that is that's a advanced lesson that'll be learned later on,
Mhm.
But for right now, I'm learning these other subtle ways of communication. And that's what's been going on with the UFOs. I don't know who they are. I've definitely seen a lot of different things up in the
Mhm.
sky that are very physical and also non-physical and plasma like. Um, and I don't have any answers for it. But I do know that like it's made a good impact in my life. It's brought along a lot of contemplation. It's also opened me up to like how fractured and like really fucked up the new age world is, and the way that the exploitation of this particular experience that people are having, and how it's been manipulated and 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 that's good too. What does that do? That brings up personal discernment. That brings up, guess what? It doesn't matter what anyone says. Disclosure has nothing to do with what's out there. It has to do with what's in here. And that if you seek it out, if you seek it out, if you seek out them, there will be a response. That's
Mhm.
with the Sasquatch as well. And really, that's kind of like with anything supernatural in this supernatural experience that we're having. It's
Mhm.
nothing less than a supernatural experience where all of the rainbow, from the positive to the negative, can somehow have an interaction with us, and we can have some sort of interaction with it. So when we're stepping our big toe into the waters of acknowledging the supernatural and then working with it, use your discernment, both hands
Exactly.
on the wheel, know what you're dealing with. Don't be deceived. The more that we dive into the supernatural, how many stories are out there of the trickster? How many stories are out there, the warnings of like, hey, guess what? It ain't all just like, sunshine and fun and angels, right? Like, no, there's a lot of stuff. And that's another thing that I say about the Sasquatch. It's like, they're not the only ones in the forest. Don't forget that.
Exactly.
Don't forget that. Don't forget to put your barriers up, your energetic barriers, and only allow for that higher initiation, that higher experience, that positive experience. I have a friend who puts this out as her prayer, part of her prayer. She goes, I would rather have no experience than a negative one.
Right.
Hear me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so that's part of our practices as well. When we step into the forest, we fully recognize that there are no veils, and that we have to have that respect, not just even just for the physical aspects of nature, because you better respect that, because nature will kill you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But absolutely, the non-physical aspects of nature as well. Respect that. Respect yourself. Respect the entire situation. You're not in there for fun. It's like nobody at this point, with the people who I know who are doing this and having these real experiences. It's the same as if someone was doing ayahuasca. It's like, you don't do it for fun. You're doing it to learn. It's an uncomfortable experience when you have to face your shadow and face all the ways in which you need to improve yourself.
For sure.
Because that's what the Sasquatch are providing, these higher dimensional ones, because it does seem just the same as there are the abilities for the human to follow their free will and be an amazing person, or an absolute, very destructive one. It seems like there's that as well. And that maybe that they're because a lot of people have had some bad experiences, right? But there's so many factors to it. I've never had a bad experience. Even if I was to describe some of the experiences, they might sound extremely frightening.
Sure.
But I'm on the other side. I wasn't hurt. Only good lessons came from it.
Right.
I've never had a negative experience. But like I said, I'm also going in there with that respect for that entire experience. So people who are having negative experiences could be, it might not be Sasquatch, it might be one that you pissed off because they've seen you act a fool in the forest and dump your garbage and, shoot your guns and just be disrespectful to everything. So yeah, they might chase you out of the forest, right? Because they don't want you anywhere near their children. They don't want you anywhere near the animals out there. So, but yeah, there is this aspect of the Sasquatch that are higher dimensional. They're psychic. You can, if you go to the Wikipedia, I did this once. I was like, what is that list of the psychic abilities that we know for humans, right? So I just looked it up on Wikipedia. I went down the list. I was like, I can put a story to each one of these and how I've had an experience with the Sasquatch. So their psychic abilities are fully turned on, every single one of them down that list, plus some that aren't even on that list. It's not about a question of like, what can they do? It's like, what can they not do?
Right.
I'm
so compelled by your personal history in that you come from a law enforcement background. So you were trained to be an observer. You were trained to assess and to be able to use multiple skills to assess a situation, to assess a person. Do you think that plays an active role in why you've been chosen to have these experiences?
I yes, I think so, or at least it's allowed, every part of our journey is the preparation for what's next. So when I look at my personal history and see just like kind of this outlandish, like if I wrote it all down and handed it to you, you'd be like, is this on Netflix or what? Like, this is
Can
insane.
I binge watch this?
Really? Because it gets wild, and it's very diverse. And I lived like all over the country, and I had a lot of unique experiences in my childhood that gave me bigger perspectives and different perspectives than the other kids on the playground.
Mm-hmm.
I had to grow up real
Mhm.
quick
Yeah.
when I was young. And all of those factors, I think, have a play in it. The law enforcement stuff, though, yeah, I mean, it was close to it was like 8.5, 9 years total.
Mm.
Part of that in Arizona and part of that up here in Oregon. But it does hone your skills, especially for observation and witness and taking in details. And I try to, because people will ask you, like, well, what do you do when you come across like a situation, and those skills that we learned, what happens when you come up to a crime scene? Like, how do you preserve it? How do you walk around it correctly? How do you not disturb what's going on, so you're
Mm-hmm.
not
Yeah.
destroying any evidence and properly removing those evidences? So it'll play in, but then it's goofy because I forget every time when when I stumble upon like something, you just turn into a kid again. And then it's like, oh, did I just step on that footprint? Maybe, but that's all right.
I like the I like the level of intention that you bring to these experiences, and that you turn them into something that's interactive. I think it would be very easy to come across some of these situations and be just so gobsmacked. You just kind of before you know it, you're like, what just happened to me? But it seems to be innate to you to want to interact with these beings, whether it be a UFO or whether it be Sasquatch. Does that just come naturally to you, or is it a desire to want to know more about the other in that experience?
um it is during that kind of like beginning of like that 2010 time period where, like, really it was just like I everything was flowing in. I was devoting every moment of my free time to looking into every aspect of anything that um I knew had value.
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and that also, it set me up to meet very influential people who knew what they were talking about, who were very experts in the very specific uh, avenues of personal education.
Mm-hmm.
And so once like all of that started happening, and then this was being presented, I didn't fight it. I
Mm-hmm.
guess I didn't fight it, and it was like I'm recognizing that they're putting that much effort into getting my attention, then I need to reciprocate
Yeah. Yeah.
with
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mhm.
because there's something important going on here. There's I I I always have had my own personal connection to God and spirituality and Christianity, and then I began exploring so many different options, and it's circled back into what is it's like I'm more anchored in my faith and relationship with God through my connection with the Sasquatch,
Mm.
which is so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm more connected in my relationship and friendship with God because I'm seeing these things, and these things are having these experience I'm having these experiences with them, and it's this broader, you know backed up look on everything, larger expansive look. um and it's happening here, it's happening now, it's always been going on here, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're all having these beautiful experiences, I might have like maybe jumped off the deep end in terms of my focus and attention and doing that, but it has produced beautiful results, you know. And I think it's super important that we continue the conversation because it's not just me, right?
Mhm.
Like it's like so many people are having their own experiences and also not having safe spaces to talk about their experiences
Yeah.
because of ridicule or whatever from friends and family and loved ones. And I experienced that too, you know? Like I definitely, like when your head like just starts exploding out with with all this knowledge, and then you just want to share, and I did this, and nobody wanted to hear what I had to say about
Mhm.
like, you know, any of this crazy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can be lonely, and that can be weird,
Sure.
and that can be weird for the experiencer, and then they shut it
Yeah.
down. There's been so many instances since the films have come out. A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, and A
Mhm.
Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, where the they like to say that the paranormal is normal. I think Simeon Hine
Yes.
said that,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and that's become this motto for the films and for our journeys and for our sharings. It's like, nah, man, like we're all experiencing this. It,
Mhm.
and let's normalize the conversation so there aren't people who are holding it in their gut and making themselves have ulcers,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know? Like it's a shared experience of walking through this supernatural realm. So let's talk about it. You know,
Well, that
it's
leads me to my next question. I want to talk about location because as I was watching your I wanna say it was your personal interview, the full-length 43 minute version. You talked about the place that you were in, the physical location that you were in, and what my question is do you believe or just what your opinion is of this? Do you think that you are crossing a dimension and you are actually entering into the Sasquatch dimension? Do you think or they are entering into our physical dimension? Or is there a thin place where there is a connection where those two dimensions lay over each other and one person, you, it has one foot in this dimension and the Sasquatch has a foot in another dimension?
That's a great question. Thank you. Um, and I can only speculate, but it really does seem that with my experiences and the experiences with my friends who are they're putting even more time and effort into these connections out there. Um, I Marcia K. Moore, I think this is she said this and she had this experience and it was this epiphany, and it really just like it ties a bow on this whole thing. And it's this concept of like it's not us or it's not them bringing themselves down in vibration necessarily. It's not them bringing themselves down to meet us down here,
Mhm.
but it is more of us uplifting our frequency to where then we are now seeing part of that. So that's this like I've always kind of felt this too, that there was this multiple layered aspect
Yes.
to this reality,
Mhm.
this, you know, every band of frequency, my goodness,
Yeah.
how many multiple, you know, layers in both directions does that actually entail? But if there is this aspect of us literally like floating through the higher dimensions, the lower dimensions, we
Mhm.
aren't even like fully recognizing of it, because it's all just flowing together, but then we can recognize it when someone like a Sasquatch shows themselves because you know, that's a little out of place
Mhm.
in our normal everyday physical reality. um So there was I have a friend who recently, I'm not going to go into all the details because it's their private story, but
Sure.
he was camping with some other people, and they decided to do a hammock camp, like away from the group, and just see what happens. Well, one of the people there was he snored very loudly when he was asleep.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And my other friend was awake and in this hammock that kind of like he was in it. So he
Mhm.
couldn't
Mhm.
really see
Yeah.
Yeah.
on either side,
Mhm.
right? And there are these trees around where they've got these hammocks hooked up to and whatnot. So he starts seeing in this limited vision,
Mhm.
he starts seeing the tree bioluminate, right? The
Wow.
tree begins to glow and this energy starts moving up and down the tree and he's watching it. It's something that we've experienced before.
Mhm.
The all like the gamut of experiences that happen in one camp out is just it's off the charts and it goes in so many different directions. So we have seen these types of lights before
Mhm.
in association with the trees. So he's watching this and he's trying to get the other guy up to the point where he screams his name on the third time he says his name. And he never gets a response from the other guy,
The snoring guy.
the snoring guy.
Okay.
Okay. Well, during this time, he never heard any snoring.
Wow.
So this brings up the question of like, well, were you put in this higher frequency situation to where now that he wasn't part of it? And
Mm.
Mhm.
you heard that he wasn't part of it because you stopped here. He heard him snoring, then he stopped. The lights were happening on the tree. It was like
Wow.
he was having this higher dimensional experience, and the lower stuff wasn't there. And then when
Interesting.
yeah, and then the lights go out, and then he heard his buddy again snoring.
Wow. And the one of the trees that lit up was one of the ones that his hammock was tied to?
Yeah, I think it was like it was the one at his feet, I think, or
Mhm.
the one like at his head. It was either one of those. But are they stepping down into this physical dimension? Yes, they are. They're doing that too because and they are known as the ones who walk through the worlds. They
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
the ones who walk through the worlds. They can be in this they want to be in this physical dimension.
Mhm.
They appreciate from my understanding from literally those who I trust, the elders in our community who are having those conversations with the Sasquatch, you
Mm.
know um, is that they appreciate and how could you not when you're talking about like a fully balanced loving beautiful relationship with nature, like it's a pretty cool
Mm.
place. This realm is awesome, and so I get that why they want to fully immerse themselves in that way in this physical and um and it does seem that there has been this connection, brother sister relationship, the neighbors of the forest. They've been known by so many different people all over, and we've had an amnesia for whatever, because it seems like we have an amnesia for a lot of things that potentially went on, and now we're at where we're at. But we do have this disconnected relationship with them when once it was much more connected, and we were in a much more balanced student teacher relationship with our
Mhm.
brothers and sisters of the forest
Yeah.
who are in a better alignment with God and nature. They recognize God, they appreciate the creation you know
Well, there's been an uptick in frequency shifting. So like EMFs and this, I think on some level there's been a dumbing down of the human experience intentionally to disconnect us from nature. And so I think there are people who are very vigilant and very adamant about continuing that connection. And then there are other people who co-sign on Neuralink and, this futuristic version of reality that castrates us from nature. So I think that has something to do with whether or not you were having these experiences. Because I don't think Sasquatch has an iPhone, if I had to guess. Yeah.
I will say they do know how to work them.
Wow. Holy shit.
And I
Do
will say
tell.
this, that the ones who are connected to me are very most likely listening to this conversation right now.
Hmm.
Well,
And
bless them.
Yes, I invite them to participate and interact with us. Definitely. I'm very, very open to that. So,
And
fantastic.
yeah,
And I say this hand on heart, look for some experiences, look for some evidences of that, because I I talked to Danny Katz, I talked to Emily Moyer, I
Mhm.
talked to a few other people. And I said in those interviews too, I said, "Hey, this just seems to be a thing, and this has been happening over the last year. Um, I'll talk to someone, and then very soon they'll start having their own experiences with the Sasquatch, no matter where they're at." So this happened with Emily. This happened with Danny. This happened with my friend in Pennsylvania. This happened with is there someone else? There's someone else, um, but they've reached out to some people. Those people have done some pretty proactive things, and made movies, and are doing interviews and continuing the conversation. And you guys, the interviewers, are it's in your consciousness. It's now, you're having a focus on that, and that connection is there. That's one of the biggest things that they teach us all the time, is the interconnectedness between us all.
yes.
And they have a collective consciousness that's fully in tune and fully online. The collective. When one Sasquatch knows you, they all know you.
Well, we
It
are
doesn't
approaching this with deep respect and reverence, and we intend no harm to any being on this earth
For sure.
or in any other dimension.
Yeah, they
Well,
know it. They know it too. They know your heart. They know your story. They know every detail about who you are, every flaw. And they see that beauty. That's one of the most amazing things for me, because we are these flawed individuals, right? And this happened for me. I've had massive healings from them, not
Mm,
just on like an emotional level, but a physical level, emotional level. I've had these beautiful interactions with them. Other people have too, within my group, where if you're taking this seriously, and it's not just like like, oh yeah, let's go get scared in the woods and shine our flashlights everywhere, or whatever. But no, if there is reverence, and there is respect, and you are willing to learn about yourself and heal that which you need to heal, what you have left to work on, if you focus on that, man, they are going to be there to help you, not to hold your hand, not to do it for you, but to be the biggest encouragers of you doing it yourself. And they will help and encourage you in the ways that they will, but it's never, a hand holding and
mm.
doing it for you. It's all very much about like you learning to swim, you know.
well, sort of an offshoot of the question that you asked about location, I would say, is it more of, I mean, they're what the Irish call thin places where there seems to be more activity of these sorts there. Is it more of a location based phenomena, or is it more of a frequency based phenomena that can happen anywhere? It doesn't matter where the location is.
So I'd say both
Mhm.
to that. Um, it's beautiful to be in their lands, to be in
Mm,
their homelands. And you can feel the difference of the energetic signatures of where they decide to raise their families. And that does, I think, especially with like having a creek or running water around, and also potentially the ley lines involved and the minerals and whatnot of that area will heighten certain things. So like when we go out to Greenwater and have our campouts at this particular spot, just off the charts stuff, like off the charts, time loops, mimics,
Mm.
TR3Bs flying over, orbs flying around our tents, portals opening. That's just to name a few. So there's a large concentration
Mm.
when we're in their homelands, and there is the knowing that they are safe and that the children are safe. It seems like there's a lot of interaction that we are doing with the young ones, and that the Sasquatch parents know that they can trust us around their kids. They can trust their kids around us.
Mm.
And so the kids are rambunctious and they're playful and they are psychic as all get out,
Mm-hmm.
and they're playful with that. So
Mhm.
it can just go in so many directions when we're there. I've also had experiences at home here in the city. Again, I'm not like out of the city. I'm in the city,
Mm.
and I'll get glyphs in the front yard. I see all the UFOs from the front yard. 99% of all the action is happening just because I step outside. So it doesn't have to, they can go, it seems like they can go wherever they want. They can
Right.
cloak.
Mm-hmm.
They're going from this dimension to another. When people see them run, it's not them running, it's them going so fast they're a blur
Mhm.
that they don't
Yeah,
even look like they're running.
exactly.
They're bending space and time.
Mm.
They're not interacting with space and time the way we are, but they're also like choosing to come in and experience space and time,
Mhm.
Mm.
you know?
Like
But
dipping into.
they're the ones that are walking through the worlds, and you can have an experience in your home. You can have an experience in the middle of the city. It's not just me that's had that type of experience,
Mhm.
It's so many people at this point, especially like more people are they're feeling more comfortable on talking about all the weird stuff because it's like it gets really weird really quick, and you just got to be okay with it,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
be okay exploring just the subject as being an actual subject.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What you mentioned sort of UFO activity and Sasquatch as almost as the same thing. What we've talked to a lot of different people about this subject, but what do you feel like the connection between those two things are? Or are they two things? Are they just one thing?
They're totally connected.
Mhm.
They're totally connected. I just say that from my personal experience of having those connections
Sure.
at the
Mm.
same time and having that happen over and over and over again. It's not a one-off, and it was the first experience that I had with the Sasquatch in 2013. When I had the call and response happen behind me at 3 o'clock in the morning when I stepped out of my van, and I had a moment where I was like, okay, I guess this is Sasquatch. I guess there's a Sasquatch behind me. And I telepathed to them. I said to them, peace be with you, much love. That's what was in my heart. That's where I
Mm-hmm.
was at. I'd already had so many experiences with the UFOs. I'm learning about the Sasquatch. Oh, Sasquatch are up here too. Oh, okay. They're connected to the UFOs. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm hearing a Sasquatch behind me. Peace be with you. Much love, man. Like awesome. And I felt so goofy doing that. It was funny to me. And I looked up, and when I looked up, right over like 100 feet above me, two balls of white light, crossed in an X pattern right above my head.
Well,
So that's interesting because that's one of the glyphs that they'll leave us all the time is a perfect X.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll do that with trees that they've
mhm.
ripped all the branches off of and turned upside down and shoved back into the ground and made the perfect 45-degree, every single time X. And that is what we have come to know as a greeting, as a welcome. So I didn't even really like put those. I've always said, yeah, like there was these two that crossed over me, and I've said that, and that's what happened. But it wasn't until like last year I was like, it was an X. It was an X, and that's what they give us all the time. And it was like they did it right over
Mm-hmm.
top of my head after that. After they made that first, vocal initiatory connection.
You mentioned that in some of these orbs, and your orb video and photography is so compelling, and I've seen many versions of people's orb photography and video, and I've never seen anything that resonated with me so deeply where I felt like it was real, like what you were experiencing was real. And you've mentioned that there were different aspects to these orbs where you would see like an eye or a face. Uh, what I wonder is, do you believe or posit that this could potentially be something that is interterrestrial, that it's coming from within the earth and not necessarily coming from outside of our atmosphere?
Fully. So it's really funny that I've seen all these UFOs because I'm a total geocentrist and like I'm like there's a firmament up there, like we're all here and that goes along with it too.
Mhm.
What do the old stories say?
Mhm.
What is everybody saying? What is everybody saying? That we're under a dome, that there's this, world tree, that there's
Yeah.
this centerness,
Mhm.
that there's this underworld, that there's this upper world, that there's these layers, that we have civilizations who've just disappeared. Did they raise their frequency? Are they still existing in a different frequency bandwidth of, the expression of Earth?
Mhm.
Probably. Something that'll happen to us in our camps. This has been experienced on multiple occasions by people. I haven't heard it yet, but it'll be really fun when I do. But people will go out, and this will happen alone or in a group. They'll go out into an area and they'll hear crowds cheering
Wow.
like they're inside of a stadium, right?
Wow.
And it's like, who's that? And it's not far off, like, oh, you can barely hear it or whatever. But it's no, they'll step into an area and everybody just starts, cheering from the
Wow.
cheering section.
Crazy.
That's
And
insane.
another time, I think it was Rob, he went off into this one area of Huckleberry Creek area camp, and he heard picnics. He just heard like casual conversation and picnics happening all over, and it's like he's in the middle of the woods. There's no one else around. It wasn't us. It's like,
Interesting.
well, what is that about?
Yeah. Wait, I mean, was the chatter a recognizable language, or did he go into that?
Um, I can't remember. That was a few years back.
Mhm.
I can't remember if he heard English or if it was something else. I've heard the Sasquatch talk. I've had them right on the other side of the tent. I've had them this far away. I've had
Mhm.
them touch me. I this past September, they were throwing Douglas fir cones at me and my friend, and that video is phenomenal. If you get a chance, go to my YouTube channel. I started documenting like last year all these fun experiences, and that was off the charts, man. And so many other things. Like that's where like it was either a time displacement
Mhm.
event that
Mhm.
happened, or a mimic, because this is what they can do. They can shapeshift.
Mm.
Yeah.
They can cloak. They can turn themselves invisible, but they can also shapeshift. And they
Mhm.
can also it's not even like that they need to physically do all these things to hide themselves from you. They can manipulate your brain.
Mhm.
Mhm.
They can manipulate all of your senses, all of the ways that you pick up reality around you. They can manipulate that. So, um, when I've heard them speak, uh, there's people who've heard them speak, and it sounds like they call it samurai chatter. It's
Yes.
very
Mhm.
fast. It kind of sounds Chinese,
Yeah.
and they've heard that. I personally haven't heard that, but I did hear I heard a female Sasquatch who literally saved my life from a cougar attack.
Hmm.
She walked up to my tent a few years back, and she was talking to her male companion who was walking with her. And the language that I heard between them sounded like Elven from like the Tolkien films.
Wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I know.
Amazing.
It floored me. It was this lush, um like like a Nordic sounding
Mhm.
lush language.
Yeah, because
So
the samurai chatter sometimes can sound really almost aggressive, like a pissed samurai.
right.
Yeah, odd.
And that's like, there's there's I've heard that, there's the Sasquatch that are using fully their capabilities of like their psychic abilities and these higher dimensional ways of expressing in this reality. And then, with that variance, it seems like there's also other Sasquatch who are not dependent upon, they're not trying to depend on their psychic abilities. They're going more into just the physical expression. They're experiencing just the physical type of experience in this reality and are having, and that might be seen as a little more animalistic,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Or a little
Mhm.
more feral. And they aren't this is coming from Robin Haynes. She's had habituation on her property for 30 plus years, and this is the information that she's been given through her conversations. It makes a lot of sense to me, fills in the gaps as to why some people are having these like amazing high vibe, super crazy cool experiences, and then other people are having this more animalistic encounter with Sasquatch. But it seems like, just the same as like the Amish don't use technology and they live a more simplistic life. It seems like there are some Sasquatch who are not using the psychic technology
Hmm.
or the multidimensional technology, and they aren't teaching their children that either. So they're having this other type of experience. And again, I don't think I've had experience with that. I've only had like these, I've been working with a few different clans
Mhm.
specifically.
Mhm.
Um, but when I'm showing up to new places that I've never been before, I'm getting greeted. They know, when one knows you, they all know you.
Mhm.
So, and the orbs, it's like the Sasquatch can cloak, they can shapeshift into anything that they want, um, and which also includes orbs. So they're traveling in orb form. They're also producing orbs outside of their body. It seemed like that
Hmm.
red one that I filmed and is at the end of that interview.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's the full one of the full clips. Um, that that the Sasquatch were down on the ground. And
Mm.
there were other lights happening, and we saw eye shine, like, right at the bottom, and these other lights were flying around.
Yes.
So, yeah.
The
So it was like they had this one center red one that was above them. We found their fist prints in the duff
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
the edge of it. It was they were inside of this grove of like 5 trees, which this particular area had been it had been deforested and replanted like back in the 60s, I think. So
Mhm.
Mhm.
everything's rose,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it's a little jarring on the brain, but it's actually really great for seeing very far distances
Mhm.
into the forest, because
Right.
it's just columns and rows. But there was, in this particular spot, there was kind of a circle of trees that had all come up at the same time, and the Sasquatch were inside of this area. And I think there was more than one. That whole event packed so much into it because it started with the men of our group. They took drums and they went down this path to go play the drums for the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch love music.
Mhm.
They love when we express through music and through song. Um, and so they went down this path at nighttime, totally pitch black, to go play the drums. And when they did, they get to a certain point and they start seeing that red orb. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
it's flying all around and it's doing all these things and it's interacting with them and they're playing native drums and then they're like, well, we should just we got to tell everybody else. So
Mhm.
they come and get us. They're like, you guys, there's this orb that's just hanging out. You guys got to come over and check it out. So we took all of our lights, we turned them off. We have no lights on. It's so dark, we're all holding on to each other. And it's
Mhm.
a group of maybe like 6 of us, 6 or 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 or so. And And I've got my hands on my friend Sandy in front of me as we're like Scooby-Doo gang all together walking
Mhm.
through the forest at
Uh-huh.
nighttime to go see an orb. And I look over, and in the tree line, paralleling us, is this light body Sasquatch. It's a body of light, but that
Mm.
body has no neck. That body is huge. It's at least 10 feet tall.
Mm.
And it's back here, like keeping up with us.
Mhm.
And I look back, and I remember I said to Sandy, I said, "Sandy, there's a Sasquatch and a light body behind us." And she went, "Oh, okay." And we just kept going,
Mhm.
right? And we get over to this orb, and we're standing there and we're looking at it, and we have these interactions with it, and we can't really tell how far away it is because it's totally pitch black.
Mhm.
Um, and it lasts for over 45 minutes that
Wow.
we're standing there as a group watching these orbs flying around, coming up very close to us, pulling back, going 50 feet in the air, and doing all this stuff. I'm not even thinking at all about the Sasquatch and the light body that I saw. Like, we're
Mhm.
just all focused on this. It got to the point where, like, most of everybody left. Like, everybody left because they were like, well, I mean, like, are we going to stand out here all night? You know? Okay, cool. So they left. And me and Kevin, we still were there. And I was like, wait a minute, I've got a night vision monoscope
Mhm.
in my bag. So I went back to camp, I grabbed it, um, and I came back and I looked at it through the monoscope. So at this point, I'm looking at it with my eyes. I've
Mhm.
filmed it with an iPhone, and I'm looking at it with a monoscope, and I also map out. I'm like, "Okay, here's where this tree is because it's pitch black.
Mhm.
We're not gonna turn a light on or anything like that, a flashlight or anything." But I see that this tree is here, and then I start mapping out, "Okay, this is here, and this is where the orb is." And it was at that point that I realized that it was like 10 feet away from us.
Wow.
I also noticed, like, shimmer, like, there were other shimmering lights kind of around it that seemed to be either coming in to the orb or leaving the orb.
That way it was so interesting because in those 3 different ways of looking at it, with my eyes, with my bare eyes, it was a round, spherical, red ball
Mhm.
that would turn on, and then turn off, and there was a 3-second in between
Mhm.
Right.
of the and it was constant, you know?
Mhm.
I was counting it as it was doing it was keeping up. It never deviated from that. It deviated in where it was. It was flying all over, but it wasn't deviating that, cadence. And when I looked at it through the iPhone, it's like a spinning diamond,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Very
Right?
animated.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very animated, it's spinning, it's not a sphere, it's got these edges, it's
Mhm.
Mhm.
doing that.
It looked
And
like
when
a
I look
heart almost at one point.
Yeah, yes. And there is, like, this aspect of it, like, it's not just turning off. That's the thing, that's what you're
Mhm.
No.
seeing. You're not seeing a light bulb turn off, and then
Yeah.
it's a physical thing that's just not lit up anymore. It
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
popping in and out of dimension.
Interesting.
And then when I looked at it through the monoscope, it looked like an orb in photography where you've got the membrane in the
Mhm.
Right.
centralized nucleus.
Mhm.
So
Kind of
all 3
translucent.
of those different ways it was expressing, whether it was my eye technology or a monoscope or a filter of the iPhone, it was showcasing all these different things within it. It was phenomenal. And then later on, like I talked to Sam, I'm like, why didn't we acknowledge a Sasquatch in a light body
Yeah.
who's just casually walking with us
Right.
up to this area? How in the world did we just like, "Hmm, what's that? But we're going over here." Because they did it. Because they can manipulate your brain. They
Mhm.
can put the fear that you've never felt before inside your body if you are stepping into a place that you are not supposed to be.
Right.
So when people say that they've had all these experiences, like I walked into the forest and then I just got so scared out of my mind for no reason, I don't know why. It's like, well, that is a Sasquatch thing for sure. You might have they might not have been able to trust you if you were armed,
Mhm.
if you might have a quick trigger, if you hear something and you get spooked and their kids are around, they can bring that fear up in you and make you leave. They can also do that if maybe around the corner there's a cougar that
Yeah.
you don't know about.
Mhm.
Right.
So it's not necessarily like you're a bad person, so we want you out of here. It's like, oh, I'm gonna help you out, brother. You'll never
Right.
know. You're just gonna get scared,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna help you out.
I'd also be curious to know if there was a pattern to it, but if that was some kind of a coding, like Morse code or something, that it was
I don't know.
saying it was speaking to you with that undulation of the light.
I don't know. It could be, like sometimes I film Venus and I'm like, what kind of Morse code is coming out of Venus?
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. Um, so, and if we are talking about a wandering star, one of the wandering stars within the firmament that is
Mhm.
an orb that's pulsating out a light, that when people look at it real close, it looks like it's underwater. It's not a
Mhm.
physical item, and we stay in that in that sphere of our like seven original aspects, the five wandering stars and our sun and moon uh, and earth, right? Like that type of perspective. What are those? If the orbs are if this is a universal form of travel
Mhm.
that consciousness or a soul will take to travel, if we're taking them during astral traveling, and that's why, if you go into a bar or a place that's been occupied for hundreds of years, or sacred spaces or whatever, there's orbs flying all around.
Mhm.
Is that on this lower level of consciousness and astral travel and humans, and they're taking this form to do so non-corporeally?
Mhm.
Okay, is this a technology? Is this a technology that we subconsciously know how to access, but we don't consciously know how to access, but the Sasquatch do, and others know how to as well? And it's the shape of, the real nice UFO thingies that I see up there that are flying around and come in to say hi and to, offer encouragement during good times and bad. It's also kind of the shape of what they say the angels were,
Mhm.
a sphere within a sphere and a circle within a circle and all of those things. Well, what is this shape and how many are utilizing it? And what are those wandering stars that are
Mhm.
also utilizing that shape?
Yeah.
You
I
know,
was curious about, uh, the gentleman called Kyle in The Flash of Beauty, when he spoke about 4, Sasquatch that had been shot and then taken off, out of the area. And I know this is you could only conject, but do you think that that was allowed to happen?
it seems like they're always in control of
Mhm.
what happens.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's absolutely no way you can just pull one over on one
Right.
of them, right? And because there's this aspect of being outside of space and time, they are they'll do things where it's like, okay, you obviously knew I was going to be here. You see into the future. You knew that this event was going to happen. You
Mhm.
forewarned me. You gave me this insight that you should only know if you have insight into the future. So you're not dealing with a linear type of knowing from them. They have this all knowing.
Mhm.
Um, when the Patterson Gimlin film was taken in 1967 with Roger and Bob, Patty, that was a sacrifice that Patty made. Because it also seems too that like there is a hesitation from them to be filmed or to be photographed.
Mhm.
So whenever one is occurring, whenever these legit photos and videos are coming out, it's because it's time. It's time for that piece to come out and for people to see that. And from what I understand, that's how it was with Patty and with that film. She knew she was going to be filmed. She knew that she was going to literally become the most recognized face
Mhm.
to her entire people, and that it was going to awaken within humanity something that I think we're only really getting into right now,
Yeah.
because it took that long, and there are infiltrators within, again, new age and spirituality
Mhm.
and cryptozoology or biology or higher spirituality, all of that. There's been a hardcore effort to keep this as physical as possible
Mhm.
and as primate as possible,
Yep.
with no spirituality, no higher knowing, no connection to God, none of that. And it worked for a few decades, I guess,
Mhm.
1970s to the 2000s, even up until like 2010. If you came out and said something that was paranormal, people would just, they'd crush you. They did that to people. And it's like, well, okay, well, you must be getting a paycheck from somewhere else, to put so much effort and energy into squashing anyone who has the cojones to tell their story that goes against the narrative of what mainstream media is trying to paint
Exactly.
of these people.
Hmm.
These are a people. They are in a higher, more beautiful relationship with nature and themselves. And there's so much we can learn. There's so much we can learn. The learning has never stopped. Never will.
And of course, they don't want that on the menu. They don't want you to even realize that something like that or a group of beings can exist in that way, and that kind of peace and harmony with their environment, because that would give us some bright ideas, wouldn't it? I always wonder, with the walking between the two worlds reality that they seem to exist in, which is the home world? And are there other worlds that they walk between that we don't have access to because we have our little meat-based senses that we're kind of apprehending our reality with? Do you think that they're visiting here, or that they're here and they sometimes visit somewhere else?
It's a good question, and I really can I can really only like share that which has been
Yeah,
shared by the elders in my community that I
sure.
trust.
Hmm.
Which this information is coming from Arla Williams, who was featured in both films, actually. She lives out in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
I got to visit her land, and we all watched the eclipse in Oklahoma this past April.
Cool.
And a Sasquatch teacher of hers, Kashima, has told her that they come from a different place, um, and that's about all I can say. They come from a different place, but then I've also heard that they are the original people. They
Mm.
are the primal people. They came from another place, but there was also some aspect of them being here first. If you think about their physiology compared to our physiology, what makes more sense with being an evolution to the environment? Their bodies make sense to be in
Hmm.
the environment that
Yeah.
they're in. We have to put coats on. You know what I
Yeah, no
mean?
shit.
Like, our world, like, we'll get really cold. So
And
what happened? Like if
yeah.
there it does, like, this primal aspect, this primal people aspect, that they are way more fitting to the environment of
Oh, yeah,
the natural world
for sure.
than we are. But there is some sort of there is a genetic connection. There is this knowing and understanding from, like, the indigenous people and them, who still hold on to their stories and pass along the information that they are the brothers and sisters. We are the
Mhm.
brothers and sisters. We are the little brothers. They are the big brothers. Um, and the genetic connection is within the mitochondrial. There's from the testing that different people have done on the plethora of physical evidence that gets left all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've had so much physical evidence, and that's fun, and it's neat to find, the prints or whatever. But the testing has been done. There's a mitochondrial link, but that nuclear link, it's unknown. It's
Mhm.
not. It's not in anything that's been mapped. So it's a 100% unknown. So what does that say? I think it's interesting too that, like, they're called there's the bumper stickers or whatever that say they're the hide and seek world champions,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Social
It's
distancing.
certainly true for history,
Yeah.
you know? Like, they are hidden real well within history, but then also talked about all over the place.
Mhm.
And everybody has this story that of the wild man, or
Mm-hmm.
of the Sitonga, or of all of these similarities. And there's definitely people who think that when in the olden times they're talking about the giants or even the Nephilim or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
they're grouping them all together and saying, well, these must have been the giants and these must have been the Nephilim.
Mhm.
I don't think so. Don't think so. I think the giants were here. I
Mm-hmm.
think the Nephilim are probably still here. And they are not this evil trickster. I've never had that evil trickster energy coming from the ones that I've connected with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure, pretty certain at this point, like, I've had some connections with the dogmen too.
Mhm.
So, and I'm still here. I don't have a scratch on me. I'm only a better person, and we're all sharing this environment. We're all here in this world together. Um, and whatever, the how many times have we all said the veil's thinning? It's like, it is. It is, but it's already thin, and it's
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
already here. This is the reality of
Mm-hmm.
this place. And it can get real weird real quick if we put our focus into it. And it's a bit of our birthright. We are the
Sure.
magic.
Yeah.
We're not boring desk job cubicle people.
Mhm.
We are going on the adventures. We are uh battling through Mordor. We are doing these explorations with the gnomes and the fairies and all of that. Those, they are reaching out. I've seen a fairy on
Do
more than one
tell.
occasion.
What was the experience?
Three Septembers ago, I was out at my friend's land. It's a very, very special, large piece of land out on the gorge. It's a 30-mile diameter piece of land.
Wow.
And it's a refuge. There's no hunting there. So the
Mm-hmm.
deer population is prolific. The
Mhm.
wild turkey population is prolific. They are caretakers of this land. And there are Sasquatch who are living there on that land. And I have visited there many, many times. And 3 Septembers ago, it was prudent and requested to camp on the land, which would have been the first time that I would have camped on
Mhm.
that land. And I
Mhm.
went there with my friends Kevin and Sandy, and we had a lot of experiences just in 2 nights of camping, 3 days of being there. And the last night of being there, this female Sasquatch who initiated kind of all of this by making the request to the person who lives there. Um, she came by the truck. I was truck camping. It was the first and kind of like only time I've camped in my truck. My tent had busted like one of the rods.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'll just see what it's like to sleep in the truck. So I've got a Jeep Gladiator. So if you can imagine the inside of a Wrangler or a
Mm-hmm.
Gladiator, I'm in the passenger seat, and I've pushed the seat back, into a lounging position, and I've got a blanket over me. And I've also got the sunshades, magnetic sunshades for the windows up, but it was for an old car, and it did not fit the wonderful squareness of the windows in the Gladiator. So there were gaps all along where I could see outside. And there was a gap on the driver's side window next to the outside window. And there was a gap over on this side. And I got in for the night. We had a basketball size orb come fly through the camp. We also played music. We played music. We were right next to this little creek. So again, this water aspect. We were hearing them splashing in the water. There, the land kind of like went upwards to a whole other, like, real tall plateau up on the other side of the creek. And we were on this other side. Kevin and Sandy were inside of a tent, and then I was in the truck. And it got really dark once I turned like my phone off and put it on the side.
Mm-hmm.
It got like float tank dark. And it was so interesting to me in the moment, because I remember the night before, I could see the trees, I could see everything, and there was no deviation in the weather from night to night. So I made this mental note, like, why is it so fucking dark in here that like I can't see anything, Well, then I started feeling that female Sasquatch walk up on the truck, because when they come near you, you feel it like electricity.
Right.
Their aura, their energy is so palpable and strong. And I have felt that often, so I know it. And she came up, and she wasn't alone. She had someone else with her. And she or they began doing this like full energetic something to my entire body. And it was like swirling paisleys of energy inside every nook and cranny, all throughout my entire body, from my brain to my toes. And it lasted for 45 minutes. It was going on for so long. And I was okay with it. I was chill with it, like I've experienced this before. I was laying like this. I'm like, okay, they're outside. This is happening. It's for a reason. She's doing something. We learned that she was a healer, like amongst her clan. And so I'm cool with it. I trust them. I know that they know what they're doing. And then, it was 45 minutes of it, and that was the longest that I had ever experienced anything like that.
Cool.
And then I remember I had the thought, I was like, have I always felt like this? Is this how will I always feel like this again? I can't even remember how it didn't feel to feel this way. And I was having those thoughts, and I was like, maybe it would be nice not to feel this way. All the energy like left my body.
Wow.
And at that point, I realized that I was stiff as a board. And I was not like, just casually laying back in my seat, but my back was off of the seat like that. And I was laying completely rigid. And I had been for 45 minutes, and I didn't realize. So then I was like, and I just like melted into the chair. And then I'm like, that's crazy. And I'm thinking about that. And I look over with my eyes, because I see a bioluminescent green light in that little break.
Mm-hmm.
And I look over, and it is a fairy. It is a bioluminescent woman, lady body, perfect lady body, naked, breasts, hips, everything, bioluminescent, emerald green.
Wow.
With wispy wings of like smoke and wispy hair. I never saw eyes. I never saw like a deviation of eye. I did see the nose.
How big was it?
She was like 4 inches tall.
Wow.
So like this big, right? So she took up like half of the window
Mhm.
of the mirror,
Mhm.
of the side mirror on the
Mhm.
outside,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and she was doing this, and she was peeking like this, and like coming out, and it wasn't like her wispy wings were flapping to keep her up.
Mhm.
She didn't
Mhm.
need that. She was like floating. And I was like, I'm laying here like this, I'm looking over. And when I look over, it's like I don't move a muscle. I'm just moving my eyes, but she knows.
Mhm.
And every time I look over, she like pops back behind the side mirror and then pops out. And I see her. And I'm looking at her. I'm like, holy shit. Like, I was not expecting this. This was not on my roster of experiences I thought I was going to experience. This is off the charts. No way am I seeing this.
Wow.
And I'm looking over, and then there's a second one. And the second one pops up, and she's right above the other one. And they're both coming in and out from behind the mirror, staring at me. And I think for like 2 seconds, I'm like, do I grab my phone?
Yeah.
No. I was like, I just need to go to sleep. I just need to go to sleep. I don't like, and that was just going through. I was like, if I have to pee, I have to get up and I have to get out of the truck. I was like, there's no fucking way I'm getting out of the truck right now. I just need to go to bed. I need to go to bed right now. And so, like, I closed my eyes and I laid there. And as soon as I closed my eyes, in my mind's eye, there's this purple ribbon of light that starts undulating on either side of my periphery and then coming in to the middle.
Mhm.
And as it's moving in this way, I open my eyes. And when I open my eyes, I can still see it. I still see it in this darkness of a float tank environment that I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure was manipulated to be that dark because all this stuff was going on. And I open my eyes, I close my eyes, open my eyes, close my eyes, and I'm seeing this ribbon every moment. And then when it hits, poof, I'm asleep.
Wow.
Out. I'm out, and I don't wake up until the next morning at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. The sun was rising. I woke up and I was like, well, I guess I can go to the bathroom now, you know? Like, I guess I could step outside. It's lit up. I can do that.
Uh-huh.
Was the fairy the same color, the second one?
They were both
Wild.
bioluminescent. They looked exactly the same.
Wild.
So I got out of the truck. We had a little potty tent, with a hole and whatnot. And I used the bathroom, and I start walking up towards the truck again. And Kevin and Sandy are now at the back of my truck, and they're both just standing there. And I was like, what are you guys doing? And they were like, we just woke up. And I was like, I just woke up. They were like, we just woke up and we heard these two little lady voices outside the tent. I was like, y'all don't even know what happened last night. Y'all don't even know. You have
Wow.
no idea what happened last night. And then I told them. And they were just like, what? I was like, dude, it was fairies. Like, sure. I know. I mean, like, yeah, everything's real. Everything's out there. Wasn't expecting it.
Mm.
Wasn't expecting to see it. And now that's not the only time. That's not the only time I've seen a fairy. Like I saw one at Arla's this past April multiple times. Or multiple fairies flying
Mhm.
through her forest and her field.
Wow.
So they're reaching out just as much as
Yeah.
we're paying
For
attention.
sure.
It's interesting because when you were describing the ribbon, what I kept thinking was that that was part of the healing ceremony. That somehow that was like a continuation of the healing ceremony, and then when those 2 energies converged, it put you to sleep. It's almost like getting a massage, and then after you get a wonderful massage, then you fall asleep because your
Yeah.
body's so relaxed.
When I was talking earlier about how the Sasquatch can manipulate your senses, they
Mhm,
can put thoughts, they can mind speak to you. They can
mhm,
we have these a lot of instances where people are like, yeah, I think I ran into a Sasquatch because I smelled this just absolute garbage, dog poop,
Mhm.
terrible smell, all these different smells. And the first thought for like that um strictly physical response is like, oh, they must be musky, or they must have like a scent gland, or they must
Mhm.
be exuding this smell because they're dirty or something like that. Actually, like, it's not just nasty smells that people are having, but it's also really beautiful floral smells, or berry pie, or really like that camp out that I just talked about. When they were at the end of the truck, we decided that we were going to go walk and get the parabolic mic that we had about half a mile up the road. And when we got to this certain area, we found glyphs, and the entire place smelled like a mint field.
Interesting.
So it's not necessarily that they've got scent glands, but that they know how to manipulate your brain to smell whatever they want you to smell.
Right.
Okay. So they can also do that by they can put you to sleep.
Interesting.
So that happens like literally it's like 100% of the time, at
Mm.
least within our group, we will all have off the chart crazy experiences in our tents at night, because it's like we'll have experiences during the day, we can have experiences around the campfire for sure.
Mhm.
When we go back into our tent, it's very personal, and
Mhm.
it gets very specific, and that's where, like, they will get close and perform the healing, and they will get close and have, like, this, like, very intense interaction, and there is a bit of, like, a safety net for the consciousness of the human inside the tent, because 'cause you're
Yeah,
inside of a tent, right? Like,
exactly.
nothing can hurt me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it opens us up, I think, uh, to not have like that fear
Mhm.
so much, because I mean, um and that is another thing that they can do. They can pull the fear out of you. They can put the fear into you, but they
Mhm.
can also pull it out of you, and it won't return. And they've done that with me. I did have, like, when I started camping and getting into this 2013 to like up until I joined Barb's group, and then still into Barb's group. I joined her group in 2018. So it was like 2013 to 2018. I was um I was doing these trips, and I really had an I was naive. I was totally naive.
Mhm.
It's like, "Oh, they're all nice and they're all this and it's all la 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 and it's super super cool and everything's fine and you don't need to worry about anything. Everything's love and light." No. Like, put your discernment suit on, like, know what you're dealing with, have the respect for the situation, all those things that I said before. Um, and and then, like, maybe like a year or two into Barb's campouts, where it was like all of those experiences I had had from 13 to 18 was elementary school.
Right.
And then when I joined her group and began camping, and I had that full healing happen from my alcoholism on that very first trip that I
Mm.
took of hers,
Mhm.
I went to, like, graduate school
Mm.
with my experiences. And then it was at that point that I was like, "Oh, maybe I should have a little fear. Oh, this is very, very real. Oh, this is," and it did, like, it created a fear, just
Hmm.
because it was like, no, this is really, really, really real.
Mm.
This is bigger, and so the fear kind of came with the respect of that
Sure.
knowledge. And then I worked through that as best I could, but they did pull it out of me during one of the camps, where it was like I was afraid and then I wasn't.
Mm.
And then I could go anywhere I wanted to at night. I didn't have to have a chauffeur to go to the potty tent because they'd throw rocks while you're in there.
I
you know?
I wanted to ask you about, psychedelics, because I think that there are some people that need to kind of open the door of their perception using psychedelics in order to have any type of experience other than what we consider consensus reality. And I remember in the film that you were very clear to say that none of these experiences involved any type of psychedelics. Would you posit that adding something like that, like a psilocybin or even cannabis, would maybe create a veil and block those experiences, or would it potentially make them frightening or make them maybe stay away from a human because they were altered in some way?
Right. Thank you for bringing up this subject. I think it's super important. Um, and psychedelics are the initiatory, right? Used by the medicine men
Hmm.
to bring us into the higher awareness of the multidimensional reality of this experience.
Hmm.
They are the helpers. They are the eye openers. They are the heart openers when used correctly.
Mhm.
Um, and like I said, like I had a problem with alcohol, for a very long time.
Mhm.
I was in law enforcement and the music scene. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Hmm.
Recipe.
so, and I drank away my teenage years in my 20s, and I would say that alcohol is also in this category of mind altering substances, right?
Hmm.
And it's been super messed with, and a lot of people are spiritually suffering from alcohol at this point. I would say this: don't drink. Don't go to the woods and expect to have an experience with the Sasquatch while you're drinking.
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
bullshit. It's offensive in my book. You're not putting the effort into it. What are you there to do? To have a good time, to fuck around,
Yeah.
Um, so there's that. I love cannabis. I appreciate that plant so much, and that I live in a state that, it's I can go to the grocery, or not the grocery store, but I can go to the corner store and pick
Mhm.
some up,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and so there's all these layers of like the respect with that, of what you're going to let yourself be under the influence of
Mhm.
when you're going into literally like an absolute psychedelic experience just on its own,
Yeah.
right? A
Hmm.
multidimensional experience that you don't need any of those things to step into. Um, I think that I think everybody needs to, in the most, my personal experience, my personal feeling is that we can all learn from psychedelics, right? When used appropriately and with that respect, and with as the teachers that they are, like it absolutely has a place within our experience. And I have, I think about how crazy crazy the experiences have been, just again in this time frame of being in Barb Shoop's camps from 2018 until now.
Mhm.
Hmm.
To even think about putting a mushroom into that scenario, just it's too much. It's like, you do not want to do that, right?
I
Like,
could see that.
because again, it's respect for the situation. It's respect for, like, you don't want to do anything to harm yourself or put yourself in danger.
Hmm.
Um, and but all of that being said as well, there are people who are having psychedelic experiences with the Sasquatch,
Mhm.
and not just them taking it, but they're giving the Sasquatch the mushrooms, and they're having
Wow.
psychedelic experiences.
Hmm. I was
Wow.
gonna
I
ask
know.
about that. Yeah.
I know.
Like whether they had their own version of that.
It never even really crossed my mind, and I know that I said that in the interview, like, we don't do drugs, and we don't,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
like, and I wouldn't want, uh, it's funny too, because I meant to say in the interview, the influence. You don't want the influence
Yes.
of it, but
Yeah.
what came out was interference. That's the
Yes.
word that
Yeah.
came out of my mouth,
I
even
noticed
though I
that
meant
too.
to
Yeah.
say influence. I
Uh-huh.
said interference. And I was like, was that exactly what I wanted to say? And then mulling it over, yeah, it is. You don't
Yeah.
want to have that
Mhm.
interference,
Noise. Yeah.
because you don't need it. You don't need that to unlock a multidimensional experience with a Sasquatch. But going that next level and potentially crossing the worlds of the Sasquatch with the psychedelic experience, like, even just now my voice went down.
Yeah.
That's reverence,
Yes.
Mhm.
like and now someone that I know, I just listened to an interview recently, and he was one of the people that I sought out first, because I knew he was having the real experiences. He's up in Canada.
Mhm.
His name's Mike Patterson,
Mhm.
and his channel is Sasquatch Ontario. And he has been having this ongoing connection with a family up there, and specifically a Sasquatch whose name is Nefertia. So Nefertia is now grown. This has been, I think, a 10 plus year engagement and connection between Mike and Nefertia. And Nefertia is now in his 20s, and there is a younger Sasquatch who's in his teenage years that is kind of taking over the role of Nefertia in his interaction with Mike.
Mhm.
So he's having a lot more interaction with this younger kid now than he is with Nefertia. Well, he's given him mushrooms about 20 times. And he'll gift with the Sasquatch at his cabin in his kitchen. He doesn't go outside to gift them. He puts it on the counter and says, "Take it if you want."
Wow.
And then he'll come back and they'll be gone. And then he'll be
That's
sitting at his table, and a marble will aport in front of his face and drop down and hit the table.
holy
Wow.
shit. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's news to me. And I was just blown away when I heard him confess in an
Mhm.
interview that was recent that he's been having this ongoing psilocybin experience where he's gifting the psilocybin to the Sasquatch, and they are wholeheartedly appreciating it. And then it's like, well, why wouldn't they? They're literally in the forest.
Yeah.
They know the psychedelic aspect of every single
Exactly.
Yeah.
plant.
Exactly.
They know everything about everything
For sure.
within their environment. So why wouldn't they be having um that type of experience as well? And holy smokes, what are you going to do on that trip if you're a Sasquatch and you take mushrooms? Like, where are you going to go?
Well, what I was thinking is it's really more about personal safety than maybe penetrating some veil with the Sasquatch. Because if you don't come with the right energy, they're not going to come anywhere near you. So if you are drunk or if you're out of control, then that's not going to be an attractor. So they're not good. So it's really more about your own safety of not falling in the forest or breaking a leg or doing something. So I think that's kind of an interesting aspect of this is that we don't really have to protect the Sasquatch. They're really worried about protecting us more than
Exactly.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah, they can take care of themselves, but we're the doofuses that can get ourselves into some major trouble just by going off path. I have a friend,
Mhm.
Kathy, who she was Sasquatch camping with one of our elders, Tom Cantrell. He's 80 years old. He's had over 60 years of connection with the Sasquatch.
Wow.
Amazing.
And he and Kathy were camping. I forget where they were, but Kathy got up to go to the bathroom, and she's like walking on the trail, and she's got the flashlight towards the ground, and she literally ran into a Sasquatch on the path. And then she screamed, and the Sasquatch grabbed her arm, his entire hand around her entire arm, and wouldn't let go. And Kathy is screaming at his face, and she's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything. I was just trying to go to the bathroom. I'm sorry, just please let me go. Screaming. So Tom gets the mind speak. He's in his tent. He gets the mind speak, and he hears her screaming, and he hears the Sasquatch say, come get your friend. So Tom walks out and walks over to her, and then just calmly like puts his hand on her arm. The Sasquatch let go, and then he takes off. And it's like, why did the Sasquatch do that?
Mhm.
Why did he grab onto her in that way?
Mhm.
It wasn't because of, um, he was angry at
Yeah.
her or
Aggression.
anything. It
Yeah.
was for her safety.
Mhm.
If she would have seen him and been able to react to the way her fight or flight, internal, it would have been, she would have ran off into the forest and gotten lost,
Mm.
you know? So he held on to her, told Tom to come get her, and let go. So like, yeah, I would not encourage anyone to do psychedelics and go and try to find Sasquatch. Absolutely not. I would highly encourage you to work on yourself and have your internal landscape as cleaned up as possible and go present yourself to them if you are looking for a relationship with them, because that's all you got to do. You are, we said, Emily said this in our interview. She said, wow, you were like literally like naked in front of them asking for help during that
Mm.
first camp out
Yeah.
with Barb. And it was so right on, because that's exactly what's happening. You are emotionally naked. They know everything about you. Don't try to hide. Don't try to act cool, you
Mhm.
know? And if your heart is into it and you're ready to dive deeper into an expanded experience, like, do it. But have the respect for yourself, have the respect for nature, 1000% have the respect for them. But, you don't have to go far either to have this connection with them. It's not necessary to try to tromp off into the forest and try to look for them. They can go wherever they want, and they're here more so than anywhere.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the things that really resonated with me was just the earnestness of all of the people who were interviewed. Everyone really was coming to this experience with such personal joy and love and a reverence for the forest, but also just a deep connection with what happened to them. And I got emotional watching some of these interviews, like the gentleman who had cancer at the very end of, I was weeping at his experience because it was so profound for him. And the healing that happened from that was not just a physical healing, but it really came from an emotional place where he had just resolved himself that he was going to die. It was like, this is what's going to happen. And I'm going to take this one last trip with my family. And it was just so beautiful that something greater decided that wasn't the story for him.
Yeah.
What I would ask you is, what do you believe the time span or the line? What is the life expectancy of a Sasquatch? Do you think they live for hundreds of years? Is it like a normal life expectancy of a human, 80, 85 years old? How old do you think that they can be?
I don't have a definitive answer because I've never asked one directly. So I don't have that. And again, it's only just from what I've heard from the elders and
Sure.
those who have asked.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because it's an interesting question, like if they can manipulate their bodies, are they ravaged by time,
Yeah.
Mhm.
or do they age the same way that we do? I've heard that there are like, so just the same as there's like different humans,
Mhm.
right? On all different continents, and we all look different, and it has definitely potentially something to do with our environment or whatever.
Mhm.
It seems like there are differences amongst them as well. It's not like the crow, right? Where every single crow looks exactly the same,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? They have the individual features just the same as we have the individual feature. And there are some that look way more human than anything else.
Mm.
And there's others that look much more primate
Mm.
instead of human. But that doesn't mean that they are any less sophisticated or or they're more animalistic because they happen to look more primate like.
Mhm.
That's not the case, but it does seem like there is is there a deviation of peoples, or um is it just because they're in these different areas, or is there like subcategories of different types of Sasquatch,
Right.
right? Because the human looking ones I've heard are like the ancient ones, that there are ancient ones that have like maybe different lifespans and longer lifespans
Mm.
than others. I don't know, but I have heard that there's the potential for them to live a very long life, and there's the potential of them having more of a human range of time here.
So we have
Um,
this semantic where we call them Bigfoot, and in, the North, they call it Sasquatch, and in other countries, they may call it Yeti or Wild Man. Would you posit that these are, as you're saying, just a different, like a different race, but they're the same species because they're coming from a different part of the world, so maybe they have different, like the Yeti or the abominable snowman looks white and has a different type of
Mhm.
fur, maybe a thicker fur.
Like a polar bear and a grizzly bear, kind of. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So there's deviation in their color, and it's
Mhm.
not fur, it's hair, right?
Mm. Okay.
It's like 6 to 8 inch long hair that's
Mm.
very flowy and beautiful.
Mm.
Um, and there's white ones, there's red ones, there's black ones, there's brown ones, there's gray ones, there's different colored ones. Um, but I don't think it's necessarily all the white ones are in snowy places,
Right.
because we've had sightings of white ones in other areas that
Wow.
are not snowy all the time.
Mhm.
Mm.
So it's more of like a hair color,
Hmm.
like, you've got blonde hair, I've got dark hair type of thing. Um, but it also does seem like there is a variation in their bodies and in their structure
Mhm.
depending on where they're at. So the Yetis, there is a specificness to their bodies and their environment, the same as there is for like those who live in swampy lands that
Hmm.
are, like hotter, or in Texas, because they're everywhere, right? They're
Right.
everywhere, every climate, every and I had a coworker who he was going to school for biology, and at one point he went down to South America to study frogs,
Mhm.
and so he was like working with this professor, and it was just the two of them. They go and they're staying at this little tiny village, like in the rainforest, and this one particular frog would only come out at a certain time at night.
Right.
So um, all the villagers knew you don't go out of the village like at night, because the red-eyed people would come and get you know?
Wow.
And they were like, "Okay, well, we have to go look at these frogs at nighttime outside of the village, so here we go." And and so then, they saw these little Ewoky guys. They were
Wow.
Ewoky guys. They were tiny, they weren't big, they were
Mhm.
tiny, but these guys frightened the daylights out of all the people who actually lived there, and they saw him. They were like in this V, like, area down in this valley, and they saw these red eyes on either side, scurrying down to come and get them, and they hightailed it back to the village. So again, like, was that a Sasquatch, Ewok sized Sasquatch? I don't know. Or is
Yeah.
that another type of being? How many types of beings are here?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
open up your old maps and see the blimmies and, all the weird dragons and, sea things and all of that. And I don't think it was just imagination. It wasn't just imagination. They were seeing these things, they were
Yeah,
experiencing these things.
for sure.
We have a wide history of life here.
Mm.
And, they are, it seems, reaching out at this time in exponential ways. Exponential. They did. It's hilarious. It's a running joke between me and Barb where it's like, you think that they can't like, make you fucking throw your hands up in the air and just go like, oh my God, how did you do that? But they do every single time. Every single time. It only gets more. It's like, how can we top this camp out? This was crazy. This is amazing. How can it get any crazier than this? And then we get back there and it does, you know. So and I'm getting like these reports from people now, and I'm getting this like my own personal insight into how much these other dimensionals are reaching out to us right now. I mean, like everything that's going on in New Jersey, that's not all drones.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't all drones, There's a lot going on in this realm right now, centralized around the supernatural expression. Big time. So it makes sense that the Sasquatch are reaching out that the way that they are, and that like me and my Bigfoot and friends are having all this weird shit happen, and that we get to
Right.
talk about it and bring it out, and that's what they want too. They're on board for this as well. They wouldn't allow us to have the experiences if they didn't want us to talk about it.
Right. Okay, so here's a weird question, but I have to ask. Has anyone ever made love with a Sasquatch?
No one in my group that I know of, but it is absolutely known in indigenous people's records and in some really interesting, like turn of the century stories that you can find in the newspapers up here in the Pacific Northwest,
Mm-hmm.
that there is the ability to create children between the Sasquatch and the humans, and that it
Right.
has happened a lot. It happened a lot in the past, and the indigenous people will talk about that somewhat, but not not a lot. And I don't speak for them, but this is just the stuff that I've picked up throughout the
Sure.
years of my research. But yeah, there are families. There's a place in Oregon that's called like Ape Creek or something like that. And
Mhm.
it was well known that this man um ended up like leaving society and building a cabin out in this area, taking on a Sasquatch as a wife, having children and raising them,
Wild.
Interesting.
So do you do you guys know about the blue people of Appalachia?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So if we have blue people in Appalachia that and I will say this, like I heard about the blue people of Appalachia. I'm from southern Indiana.
Mhm.
And I went back a couple of years ago and found out that the doctor that delivered me goes out there twice a year to do medical work on the blue people.
Wow.
So, like, he goes out there and he'll check everybody out and give everybody their physicals, make sure everybody's got their medicines or whatever. And he don't talk about it.
Hmm.
But I learned that from a cousin.
That's amazing.
And now I just told the world. But if we're dealing with blue people in Appalachia,
Mhm.
how many other people are living wild?
Yeah. Sure.
And who are part human and part not.
Mhm.
And then even with us, what exactly is our genetics going 10 generations back? Do we have any other type of genetics within us from
Exactly.
even something else like the Sasquatch, who might have a partial genetic link?
Yep.
Mhm.
I don't know, but
Yeah. That's not going to come up in any 23andMe reading that you get, like part Sasquatch, part European.
yeah, but
Yeah.
they sure are learning. what our genetics are.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
it's definitely I would agree that there is a interterrestrial, ecosystem that we are standing right on top of, and there could be people there's the blue people of Appalachia, and then I've read about, blue children coming out of the Santa Monica Mountains in California.
Yeah.
So there's an entire world that we are standing on right now. So I think when people think, "Oh, UFOs, we have to look up to see something from another realm," the reality is we're standing on another realm and we're just not tapping into that.
And you mentioned
Totally.
the firmament. I mean, many folks who are sort of adjacent to those cosmologies also posit that, the not only might there be a flat Earth, but that our Earth may be much larger than we might know about, and that there's, that there might be land
Islands.
mass, islands, land masses that are much, much bigger than what we know of this realm, which I find thoroughly fascinating and exciting. And maybe, maybe Sasquatch originate in one of those places, and if some of them have sort of migrated here. Who knows?
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we're in the physical plane.
Hmm.
Like, what? Like, if we're in the physical plane, how far does it go? Does it stop?
Yeah,
What does it house? Everything
exactly.
that's physical, that's a lot. That's a lot of expression that God
Mhm.
can do, expressing physically. So, yeah, it's amazing, and I think that, like, I Sasquatch has kind of been, called, like, the gateway drug
Yeah.
to,
Right.
to everything else, paranormal and multidimensional, because they are the ones that are walking through this world, and they are the ones who are kind of making the initiation for people to think about things differently and to incorporate a more supernatural outlook, more true knowledge of where we're at. Um, so yeah, man, like, who knows? The
Yeah.
layers and layers and layers of physical reality, the ways that I don't know, we can express in time and space, and how somehow we can interact with beings who are outside of time and space.
Mhm.
And it's all centralized here to literally find out if you're a good person or not, and you can use your free will well. That's fun. What an exciting adventure. What a
Yes.
Exactly.
playground
Yes.
to find ourselves in.
Mhm.
We've got like really good bands and like the ability
Great
to
food.
great food, like, all of that. So,
And spirit. We
Yeah.
have
yes.
spirits and we
Yes.
have intent.
We have
Absolutely.
God on our side.
Mhm.
We're part of creation. Like, don't sell yourself short
Yeah.
with this experience or
Yeah.
with your time here. It's finite. We have at least, if we just say that we have this 100 years, we have a
Hmm.
century to learn everything that we absolutely can, to wring out all of everything from this experience, the good, the bad, everything in between. It is all here with purpose. It's all here to teach us. And it's really good when we find good teachers, and that is being expressed, like, in supernatural ways as well. So,
Well, the
but
potential, I would say, Ashley, is that the Sasquatch is the steward of the spiritual world. So let's say the physical body has 100 years, the potential of 100 years, but the spirit is infinite. So they could be the intercession, the thing that we use to continue that dialogue. And maybe they're here to do that, to escort us into this other realm.
I have said before in conversations with friends about this and in different interviews too, that that's what it feels like. It feels like this friendship didn't just start in 2013
Hmm.
when they were behind me and they made noises. this connection goes beyond this lifetime of potentially when I was a child living in Indiana or wherever else I lived, and they potentially saw me and in their collective consciousness have just remembered me, because of that. And now it makes sense that we're interacting now. It's like, well, actually it's probably deeper. It's probably even deeper than that,
For
that
sure.
on a soul level, we are all connected. And that they are stewarding a really cool experience that is absolutely uplifting and healing and positive, like when you're putting that effort into it as well. So
Well, you drew yourself out of alcoholism with their help and with their intent. So they see value in you. There's a reason that you are on this journey and that you are having this very specific experience. It's very personal in many ways, in many regards. And I think you are part of the story, and that's why this is happening.
yeah,
We all are.
Go ahead.
I just said we all are part of the story. Yeah.
Yes, we really, really are. And, I feel like I've known you guys my entire life just in this little conversation, right?
Oh,
Like
shucks.
it's good.
Yeah.
It's good conversation. It's
sure.
good connection. It's this foundation building that we're all doing right now from our experiences, from our voices, from our ability to sit around the campfire and talk about what happened and
Yeah.
why it was so relevant, and that's that story, that I get it now. I get why, like, it's so important to have the oral traditions and to have the stories and the storytelling and to be around that campfire and to look into the fire's flames and to hear the words of how someone moved through an experience and what they learned. It fucking matters,
Yeah. And do no
So,
harm.
yeah.
Just do no harm. That's why you're here, is to
And
not hurt anyone, but to help.
we
So,
can. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Well, we've rounded on 2 hours, and I could talk to you all night. I
Yes.
really could.
Well, there'll be more conversations for sure.
Yes.
I would love
you
to go on
guys.
one of these campouts. I would really love to.
Where are you guys located?
We're in Lawrence, Kansas,
Kansas. Okay.
right smack
Okay.
dab in the middle.
I'm going to be moving to New Mexico soon.
Oh,
cool.
amazing.
So I'll let you know, because I've got some big plans for stuff down there, because they are there too. And really I'm being kind of divinely inspired by them to make this move.
Wonderful.
Because of what happened when I found myself there in April, on the way back from the eclipse. You can find that on my YouTube channel, Crypto Cryptid 1487. You can look up my name too, Ashlea Stinnett, spelled with an LEA at the end. Like I said, I started filming and sharing about a year ago, and it's been super fun. There's a lot of cool things in there, and in a video called a conversation with an orb in Santa Fe, you can
Ooh.
see
Cool.
where we pulled into town at 11:30 at night, and everybody was asleep in the house that we pulled up to in the middle of the desert. Could not tell, what the landscape was. And 45 minutes after stepping foot on that land, I was having a conversation with an orb 180 feet from me.
Wow.
And I got it on film. And I went over there the next day where I saw this orb, and where I asked it to do things. I whispered to it, and 180 feet, 80 feet away, it did it. Turned on and turned off.
Wow.
And then when I went there the next day to go check out that area, I was gifted this rock.
Oh, beautiful.
And if you can see, I don't know if you can see this rock, but it's a Sasquatch face. There's
Oh,
an
yeah.
Oh my
eye.
God, I see it.
There's right?
That's
That
great.
is
The
amazing.
conical head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was sitting on top of the juniper pine needles, sitting on top underneath a trinity of junipers inside in the middle on the ground,
Wow.
sitting on top, not part of the landscape, but sitting on top was this
Wild.
rock. Okay. This rock is old and weathered here. It's old and weathered here. It's old and weathered here. It was snapped right here to create this shape of
Crazy.
a conical headed Sasquatch that has one eye
Yep.
illuminated by a little flake that's been popped up. And the same has been done for the smile right here.
Wow.
These are popped out pieces that were created, and it has
Amazing.
one eye that's illuminated. So dig this. That all happened in Santa Fe when I got there. A few days earlier, I had been in Oklahoma at Arla's property.
Mm-hmm.
And our friend Ginger, who's from Georgia, came as well. It was a bunch of our Bigfoot and friends got together for the first time. We did it on Arla's land, and we went out to go watch the eclipse. So we're on the land. Ginger brought these crystals, quartz crystals from her land, and said, if you're connected to any of those, go ahead and pick one. So I picked one. I picked a rock, and I kept it in my pocket ever since, right? For that trip. And so this was like 3 days prior where I get this crystal and I have it in my pocket. And Ginger tells me as I'm walking with her on Arla's land, she tells me about her most favorite experience with the Sasquatch, which was in Georgia with a mutual friend of ours named Sam. So her and Sam were walking down this Forest Service road or something, and they had a Sasquatch in front of them. He was huge, big Sasquatch in the path, and he's staring at them and they're staring at him, and he turns and he starts walking away. And Sam whispers, he says, please don't go. And the Sasquatch turns and he stares at them, but he's got one eye illuminated. He has
Wow.
one eye that has a beam of light that's coming out of it, and it's flickering like
Holy
this.
shit.
And he turns, and he has this beam out of his eye, and he stares at him for a few seconds, and then he walks away. So the rock that Ginger gave me during this time where she told me this is this rock.
Wild.
So look at this. They're exactly the same in all of their angles, almost size, in the darkness of the yellow here and the darkness of the smoky there.
Yes. It's fucking incredible.
That is so
Fucking
beautiful.
incredible. Amazing. It was details. It was everything. And it was from a conversation in Oklahoma to Santa Fe at 12:15 in the morning, having a conversation with an orb, and then going and finding this rock there that had been manipulated to match this one and was also inscripted with one illuminated eye, just like the Sasquatch had in Georgia.
Wild. Absolutely wild.
I know. It's so, there's so much. There's so much. That's one story. I didn't even get into the mimics or the time loops or the portals. Or
well, we're going to have you back on the show.
Yes,
if you would honor
sure.
us with your presence again. We would absolutely love it.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much.
Thank
I've
you.
so appreciated this digital campfire and having all these wonderful conversations with you. Do look for anything out of the ordinary. Look for some orbs flying around your house. If you find crystals in weird areas, if you hear tree knocks, just set your intentions and go look at the sky, because you'll get a response. And we're all in this together. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
We send you many blessings. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah, let's do it again. I'll let you know when it's out.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Much love.
Bye-bye. Much
Farewell.
love.
Wow, that was amazing.
It was amazing.
Awesome.
Yes, incredible.
Everything I thought it would be and more. Of course, I always have to throw one weird question in there about the Tinder grinder of Sasquatch realm.
I felt sort of adolescent for
giggling,
for laughing. Yeah, when that's a legitimate question, a completely legitimate question.
Well, I just know that people are curious and strange and open to having relationships with all different types of species
Well,
and things and avatars and this, why not?
and I didn't get it in at that time, but because the conversation just moved somewhere else. But I've listened to a fair amount of Sasquatch Chronicles episodes, and when many people who have described the more human-looking Sasquatch, they will often make a note that their features looked very Native American.
Mm,
Yeah, so I wonder if there's some connection between that
yeah,
and what she was saying.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing that she mentioned that I thought was really interesting was about the scent. Uh, she said that they can make you smell anything. So some people will get this very strong odor that's
Mm.
musky and
Yeah.
kind of dirty smelling.
Mhm.
And some people smell like blueberry pie or
Yeah.
mint. That was another thing. So there's definitely some kind of a synergy or a symbiotic nature of that. It's not, oh, they're just these feral dirty beasts that stink.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's some methodology to the scent as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and I wonder too, because I mean, as we've talked about many times on the show and many times just amongst ourselves, that our perceptions play an important part in how we perceive things around us. So several people can see or take part in the same experience, but they come out with different observations.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me wonder. Like even I'm thinking of something that Joshua Cutchin said, at least in one of their books, where the footprints stop. I believe is where what the books are called. It's my memory is failing me right now. Where even maybe 3 people had a Sasquatch sighting, and they
Mm-hmm.
each described something drastically different.
Yeah.
How much that plays in, like, the more stories that go around about Sasquatch and how they seem to appear, I wonder if that feeds into how future people will see them because of this sort of visional, visual sort of egregore image that we've created about them. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I when you were talking about that, I was thinking of Whitley Strieber, and also of the Carl Sagan's Contact. And at the
Hmm.
very end of the film, the alien looks like her father,
Hmm.
and the communication is that this is what you can handle. This is
Yeah.
what I am looking like to you so that you don't lose your mind.
Sure.
And I think there's an aspect of that,
Mhm.
that they appear in a way that maybe is not frightening to some people, but maybe more off-putting to someone else. Yes, because we've applied our own template to it, but also because there's an intention behind that, like
Mhm.
an intention for you to keep your distance. Yes, you
Sure.
can see me, but I don't want you to approach me or whatever.
And and it's somewhat feasible to see a figure like that in the forest, something covered with fur or hair, as Ashley put it.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense. I understand why she made the delineation between those two
Mm-hmm.
terms, um, as opposed to, like a floating, multi-tentacled, pulsating, fluorescent pink
Jellyfish.
amoeba. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would
Yeah.
be much more,
Alarming,
yeah,
probably.
startling.
But I do believe that there is and I want to talk to her more about this cloaking element and aspect, and the camouflaging aspect, because that seems to be a product of evolution and survival,
Mhm.
that you're not always going to want to hide in the forest if you are a forest being or a forest creature. So cloaking yourself or camouflaging yourself is a survival mechanism,
Hmm.
because if something does approach and you want to observe it, that's a way to do that without
Absolutely.
having to disappear.
Well, and that just merely being able to do that, that ability or the possibility of some sort of being having that ability is so far off of most people's menu that they're not even going to consider something like that as occurring. So, uh, much less for people who understand that there is these beings that can cloak themselves, it must be very easy for them to sort of disappear for those who are so unaware of the possibility of their existence in the first place that it must be very easy to
Hmm.
remain,
Yeah.
something that's goes under the radar.
Well, there's lots of examples of that in the animal kingdom. There are chameleons, there are the cuttlefish that they showed in the end of the film.
Hmm.
So I think that we are, as humans, we are aware of that capacity,
Yes.
uh, but it is cognitive dissonance when you're imagining something that has been presented in a very specific way
Hmm.
in our vernacular and in our cultural vernacular. We always see it as this kind of apish giant creature. So to imagine it being camouflaged within a tree seems kind of like, to me, it seems like a no brainer, but it would seem like, wow, that's wild.
Yeah. No shit.
Uh, but I really loved her energy
Yeah.
and her capacity to articulate these extremely personal experiences, and also these very kind of complex um, elements of these experience. She was wonderful. It was
Hmm.
really great
Yeah.
to talk to her.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to invite her on after seeing her on Emily's show. Something about her vibe just stood out to me as a very pure and pure intentioned person. Just a very good, ethically sound, positive, wanting to see the positive in everybody and wanting to turn these experiences into something that's not only positive for her, but positive for everybody involved, positive for everybody, period.
Hmm.
Going back to the interconnectedness that we were talking about. And I like that. I mean, we want more of that here. And we need more of that actually in this realm of people who want to transmute these experiences and their curiosity into something that makes this place and this experience of life better.
Yeah, I think everyone is different. I really respected the gentleman in the Flash of Beauty who said, "I have pictures and I will never show anyone,"
Hmm.
because they're very personal to
Sure.
him. So I think everyone is approaching this in a different manner. I think there is a very clear reason why there has never been uh, one of these beings captured and then displayed and kind of horrified,
Hmm.
like, the elephant man.
Yeah.
It's humans have such a spectrum of capacity of love and reverence and respect, and then also a capacity for horror and for just being terrible.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a reason why this hasn't happened, and I don't want it to happen. So anyone that is approaching this experience and keeping it deeply personal, I totally understand.
Hmm.
But I really have no fear of the forest. I have a deep respect for the forest and for the mountains and for the ocean and for the power that these locations hold and harbor. And I go into those experiences and those places, those locations with a deep amount of reverence. So I want to continue that. And
Hmm.
I don't want to I would never want to exploit anyone
Yeah.
else's experience. And I
No, no.
think that she really understood that from probably conversations she's had with Emily, but also just our energy. Like she could tell that we're genuine people.
Yeah.
We're not trying to blow anyone's reality up, or or
Or
be
to ambush them.
well,
Or,
ambush them,
yeah.
or even be skeptical of someone's experience. I
Yeah.
think this it's such a cliched thing to say, but this is really a safe space for people to unpack things that have happened to them
Absolutely.
and not feel attacked,
And
or somehow feel like we are going to try to poke holes in what that experience is.
Yeah, we're here to listen and to ask you questions, or our guests questions in this scenario, about what they've gone through, and not to try and ask for receipts necessarily. I mean, receipts are interesting in some situations, but
And
they're
she's
not
got 'em.
required.
She's
Yeah.
got them.
Yeah, but they're not required. I think, science is, I think, maybe in the second Flash of Beauty that we watched, somebody was talking about how the ineptitude of science and where it's coming from is so short-sighted in many ways, that to try and think that it has all the answers for explaining the world and all the experiences that people have is silly. It's ridiculous. It's too limited.
But it's also not a static thing.
Of course it's not.
So science is as legitimate as the scientists that are conducting the experiments and the research.
But it's also so tool oriented that it's only as evolved as its tools for measuring or perception can be. So to think that it's the end all, and that if science, we've talked about this many, many times.
Well, recently I read something that now space, and I'm sure a lot of this has to do with my ongoing exploration of physics and astrophysics, that outer space is not just a void. Now it is being examined and explored that outer space is actually an ocean. And this is something that we've talked about on the show before with other people. I think it's the same thing when we're talking about these terrestrial beings being interterrestrial, that they are not coming from some outer place necessarily that is outside of our solar system or outside of our reality. They're coming from the interior of the Earth, and that is just as vast as this galaxy.
Sure.
And the millions of galaxies that exist.
Exactly. And what I was bringing up before of the land masses being the possibility of them being much more than we are aware of is, I'm very fascinated by that idea.
Which means that the interior of those land masses is just as vast.
Exactly. And especially if we don't live on a globe or a flat earth, but maybe something in between those two things, a combination, who fucking knows?
Yeah.
But there are endless possibilities.
Yeah, egg-shaped, or, there's lots of different theories behind that.
Yeah. We should.
What a wickedly amazing romp.
Yeah. Ashley is very, very cool, very incredible.
Yes.
I'm glad that we had her on.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
good
I
to connect.
had lots of questions just from watching those two films and then watching that subsequent interview that she did. But it's just so amazing when you have a flow with someone when so many other questions come up.
Exactly.
And that's the magic of doing this type of work, is that it's an ever expanding plethora of curiosity and great dialogues. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Me too. Absolutely. On many, many levels. And I highly recommend watching both of those movies. They're on YouTube for free, and they're really well done, really incredible. Sometimes when you, without pointing fingers, when you see documentaries about subjects like these, they more seem like a compilation of YouTube clips and with Zoom interviews and,
Yeah.
but this
Yeah.
person obviously put a lot of time and
Yes.
effort into respecting the subject matter.
And they're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Just
Oh my
beautifully
God.
shot
Yeah.
and
Amazing.
just beautifully edited. And
Yeah.
I would love to get the filmmakers on the show as
And
well.
yeah, the music. I mean, everything about it was just very magical, very respectful,
Yes.
and not
A++.
absolutely. So those links will be in the episode notes too. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. It's very much appreciated. If you have suggestions for guests or comments, whatever, you can go to our website, themeltpodcast.net. There's a place where you can email us there. You have your own email avenue.
Hunter-muse@protonmail.com. And I'm noticing, look at the screen, these little glimmers of light that are on both you and I.
Interesting.
Never seen that
Ooh,
before.
I feel sparkly.
We have a new shimmer.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm going to definitely keep my eyes and ears and everything peeled for
Exactly.
and make a conscious effort to reach out to these entities and see
Yes.
if something can be a relationship can be started.
That's right.
Yes. All right. Much love to you guys. Go to our website. Let us know how you feel about all of the stuff that we're talking about, and we have more great stuff coming your way. So thank you so much for your attention and time.
That's right.
Much love.
Meow.
Ta-ta.